Welcome, everybody, to the May 2nd edition, May 2nd, 2023 edition of the Rockland Zoning Board of Appeals. All members are participating remotely. That would be myself. That would be Mr. Baker Sr. That would be Mr. Haynes. That would be Mr. Tanzi. That would be Mr. Stephen Galley. And he's not here at this point, but I know that Mr. Baker Jr. is on his way. Everybody should know that if you didn't see the notice, the meeting is being recorded and live streamed as we speak. So let me just I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open.
Second.
So moved. Second.
Roll call would be required. That's myself. Yes. Mr. Baker Sr.
Yes.
Mr. Haynes.
Yes.
Mr. Tanzi.
Yes.
There it is. I'm going to read the legal ad. Notice is hereby given that a virtual remote continuance public hearing will be held at 6:30 p.m. on May 2nd, 2023 on the petition filed on Chapter 40B comprehensive permit by Shingle Mill LLC, care of Conoco, 41st Street, Bridgewater, Mass. 02320, to allow the construction of 236 units of residential housing, the project, within two 5-story buildings on approximately 29.33 acres of land located at 0 Pond Street and 152 Wilson Street, the site. The applicant is proposing 25% of the units to be classified as affordable as per Mass General Law, Chapter 40B. The site is located on 0 Pond Street, Lot 13, Map 9, and 152 Wilson Street, Lot 68, Map 10. A copy of this application is available upon request electronically from the town clerk by dialing 781-871-1874, press 1 for the town hall, then extension 6 for the town clerk. Or zoning board of appeals, same number, extension 1195. There you go. Okay, so we're actually having a meeting tonight. This is interesting. Attorney Nagel, are you gonna entertain us tonight?
Yeah, I think is Walter with us. I think he might open it up and I'd be happy to entertain questions.
That sounds good. Walter, please, our Attorney Marioni, please.
No problem. Walter is fine. Thank you very much.
Not a problem, sir. Talk to me.
So as the board knows, but it's been a while, so I'll speak and remind anyway. We have requested a few continuances to allow the engineers, the design engineers, to work with the Conservation Commission and the Conservation Commission's peer review, Nova Environmental, to move that process along to sort of catch up to the ZBA process. So one of the issues that was going on there was that the initial wetlands resource delineation had, in the commission's opinion, expired. So we were bringing that current. While that was going on, the commission's peer review consultant shared with the commission a 2021 Middlesex Superior Court decision, which essentially stands for the proposition that it's not appropriate for a commission to consider and for an applicant to proceed with a notice of intent for a comprehensive permit project until the Board of Appeals process has concluded. So based upon that, Nova recommended to the commission that they request that the applicant withdraw the NOI and file it after this board's process concludes. The applicant, of course, agreed to withdraw and resubmit once this process concludes. So that allowed the design engineers to sort of go full bore on the design plan. They submitted that formally, electronically, paper copies through your process, working with Deb, who was very helpful last week. I assume that the board and Pat Brennan have not had the time to come up to speed and give it the thorough review it requires, of course, since it was only a few days ago, a week ago. So our thought for tonight is to allow the design engineer, Damian is here, I believe, to give you an overview of the plans as they sit now. Obviously, you're the chair, you can do whatever you want. We're here, we have a full team here. But we didn't want to waste your time and the board's time either, when it wouldn't be fair to suggest that you've had the opportunity to really dive in, or have Mr. Brennan has had the time to dive in yet. So if
Yeah,
that's
that's-
acceptable to you,
Yeah,
we'd like to at least have the chance to have Damian give you an overview, unless you think it's better to just do it all at the next meeting when peer review is ready. We'll do that too, but we're here ready to give it to you.
I talked to Pat Brennan. He's already, and again, I know he's on the meeting. I'm just going to reiterate what he and I discussed. He has not had enough time to go through anything. I've talked to a number of the department heads. They have not had enough time to go through anything. I personally have not had any time to go through anything. Board members, have you guys had any time to really go through it and change it? Or check it?
Not really.
Now, Tim, Greg, no?
So,
I took a pretty good look at it over the weekend.
Okay, you have no life, so I understand that.
neither do I. So,
That's-
yeah, so I did read the whole thing.
But here's the thing, based on what, this is my gut feeling, and again, you guys, if we want to go into it tonight, we can try and go into it tonight. But based on what Pat told me, Pat has had enough of a look at it to know that the drainage itself is substantially different than what was originally proposed. The layout may be the same, but there's enough in there that Pat's gonna need a decent amount of time to go over this. And he being our review engineer, our peer engineer, or peer review rather, I would tend to go with what he's saying. And if he's saying that there wasn't enough time to review it, if Damien, you are here, if everybody's okay with it, maybe he can give us a preview of what, of the main changes of everything. At least that would make our review a little bit easier when it does come time to just sit down and get our eyes on it. Does that work, board members?
I very much support that. I think we should, and for us and for the public, it would be great to hear the summary of the changes as they see it and the issues that remain.
All right, Damien, where did I put you? There you are. If you want to go over this, if you want to bring the plans up on the screen, start where you see fit, and then we'll just go that way.
All right, Damien Dimitrick with Conoco Engineers and Scientists out of Bridgewater, Massachusetts for First Street. Just want to make sure everybody's taking a look at the plans. All set?
Yeah.
Everybody, you got eyes? All right, awesome. As described, you guys are, your first glances are accurate off the bat. The general layout of the project site remains mostly the same. There hasn't been much change to the footings, the footprint. Layout wise, the only real major difference is, the parking area that's closer to the vernal pool has been tucked in a little bit closer in that area. And I can highlight that down here. Let me get my comment notes out here. So that's just this parking area down here. So layout wise from the last iteration, that's the only, major change that, you could really dig your teeth into. Otherwise, as stated again, Pat, per our review comments with Pat and the other designer, the Novers, we have, made some changes to the drainage design. The chamber systems were all adjusted, based off of the analysis and how those review engineers interpreted, how we should design this system and what our limits and constraints should be. In that also during that process, we performed additional witness test pits with the Novers. Me and Henry were out there. We performed 4 additional pits. This area over underneath this system. An additional pit was performed here under this system. I believe that's the correct test pit location. It is either that is the correct one. a third in the, at this extent, and then a fourth was done at the front of the site. So those are additional test pits. Those were performed back in February. Dictate nothing significantly different than the information that we had gathered, but it was, confirmation, a witness test pit, usually not required for stormwater, but, given the size and scope of the project and, Rockland's standards of the work, we added those in, and we're happy to work with the Novers and Pat to get those test pits performed. So with that, we've had to, as Walter described, there had been some modifications to the wetland edge that has come across via the Conservation Commission. Those flags needed to get rehung, surveyed. Again, not a substantial change. There is not, but given the time that has gone since the original flagging, there needed to be an update. So that was performed along the front entrance of the site, and then additionally around the main campus area of the property. And with that, the retaining walls along the front axis needed to be adjusted accordingly, a little bit of a wave left or right to kind of, again, trying to avoid the getting too close to the proximity of the wetlands as possible, right? Kind of had to recenter it in those locations. Additionally, with those, the original crossing culverts that are where the underground RCP culverts, I'm gonna adjust that. Properties, give it a little more thickness here. Right here. So this crossing culvert, these were originally 18-inch RCP pipes. There was a concern with the during the Conservation Commissions, we were hoping to analyze those pipes during construction for their structural integrity. So what we, to avoid having those issues come up, what we've designed is some precast concrete structures that will just overtop those pipes, right? So, we'll have our existing grade. This will allow for wildlife crossing and additional, benefits for, if there's ever needed for replacement or repair of the pipe, there'll be easier access rather than having to, bring up the road or do anything like that, causing some other impacts to the wetlands. So, that's a major, adjustment that has come from the project. I went through the drainage design, and then, minor things such as, fencing. And let's get back to the layout page. Again, where this parking area has been brought in slightly closer away from the vernal pool here. This lot, is still going to be cleared. There's an existing property here, existing home. Added some fencing around the edge of it. That'll be a landscaped area outside the 100-foot vernal pool and wetland buffers. Erosion controls were adjusted slightly. So minor changes along those lines were also brought up into the plans. But for the most part, the general design intent of the site remains the same. The scope of the layout it falls within the same parameters for the to the greatest extent. We just went through with some further drainage design, adding in additional chambers and based on the analysis that was how the site was peer reviewed. So that's the general scope there. Again, open to questions, understood. Left to as Walter stated, give some time to the board to really sink their teeth into it. We understand that it was submitted, but wanted to bring it back up into everybody's attention as we're moving forward with the process. You're on mute, Rob.
All right, there we go. Right now, the only real question that I have, because again, I haven't had time to really go through this. The only real question that I have, what's going on with that well? We've gotten a lot of complaints at the zoning department about things that are going on Wilson Street. and people coming in with trucks and surveyors and all kinds of stuff, and just trying to figure out what's going on with that well that the zoning board was never really told about. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it happened. So,
Yeah, so that was Mike Toohill actually. I know he's been involved in the permitting of it. I can speak to the knowledge that I know is that it's been brought up with the Conservation Commission, permitted through them. I understand that they don't necessarily communicate that over to you, but I think you guys were aware that it does exist and it is occurring. I think it was brought up at one of the previous meetings. Sorry, getting a
because
little
we brought it up, not because you guys brought it up, but because we brought it up. But
Yeah, again, the permitting process, we're going through the Conservation Commission as required for that portion of the project. The intent is that the testing will be done June 1st at that moment in time is what I've been told. We had to hold off. We've been going through the permitting of it, the installation of the dewatering area, and then again with the requirements associated with the well testing and the drawdown, having to be during a certain time of the season. So that's currently what's going on with that.
okay. All right. Board members, anything you really want to talk about tonight? I don't know if there's really anything to talk about without actually going through this and looking at it. But if y'all have something, yeah, please, Bob, step up.
Do you have any information on the tonnage for those three-sided box culverts?
No, I do not.
Could we get some?
The culverts will be designed by a structural engineer at the time. Currently we use precast sizes and shapes that are usually typically readily available. They're three-sided. They'll be structurally designed.
How much, and it doesn't really show how much fill is going to be on top of it.
I mean, so right here, I mean, this culvert, for example,
Right.
we're at an elevation about 50 over the top, and the top of the culvert's from approximately 43, 42 and a half. So you'll be at about 6 feet of fill, 7 feet of fill. Maybe the math on there, yeah.
The other thing I noticed is, and it's probably premature, but in these drawings that we have now, it shows the buildings, and the number of apartments now has been reduced.
Yeah, that was the same as the previous submission. We're at 199 units.
And what was the original amount?
The original from
Yeah.
when the submission was
The first submission?
the first submission. Here, let me go back into my folders here. Yeah, I'm gonna stop my screen share here.
236.
What was it, 436?
236. The number is the same number I've been reading every single time we open it.
Right.
Oh,
I thought it was 238.
236 has been the same number that it's been on every single one from day one. I'm not going to worry about 2 at this point because now it's 199. So
With that said, that reduces it by what? Roughly 40, 35.
yes.
Why do we still insist on putting up a 5-story buildings if we're reducing by 35 units? What's going to go in those spaces?
I believe amenities were added, such as indoor amenities, such as rock retaining or rock walls and other useful areas for residents. Rick Lincoln has found that most of those amenities get used rather than a lot of the outdoor amenities. The indoor has a greater process, so reducing the number of units reduces traffic flows. things of that nature. But the usefulness of the buildings, at at those heights is still pertinent.
That's all I have, Rob.
Right, we got Mr. Baker, Mr. Haynes, anything at this point?
I'm not sure who this question be directed to, I guess to our engineer. But I was reading through the Nova comments, and there was a reference to not being able to build the sewer in Zone A. And your response to it was the sewer line connection is permittable because we'd be avoiding doing something else. Like we basically, like if we have to connect to the sewer, otherwise we'd have this other potential pollution source. But I was struggling with the kind of the logic of that, and maybe I thought maybe you could explain that to me. Like, how is something permittable? Because if you want to build something, it would be worse if you didn't do that. It just seems to me like if you can't do something, if something's not permittable, it doesn't make it permittable because what your alternatives would be worse. So maybe could you just explain the logic of that to me?
Yeah, through the commissioner, I direct that to Mike or Don. I believe Mike was the one who wrote the response.
So under the drinking water regulations for the Commonwealth, a municipal sewer can be brought through Zone A as long as it's concrete encased. That's case number one. And the other test is that a sewer can be brought through a Zone A if the alternative means of disposal could cause additional pollutant discharge into the Zone A. And so an on-site sewer system next to a Zone A has a higher potential pollutant load than does a sewer that goes to a municipal point sewer. So that's right. It's right from the drinking water regulations.
So I got that it was just the logic of it. It's sort of it seemed to me that if you're trying to do something in and you need to work in Zone A, it seems like it's saying you can't get the permit. But you're saying, oh, it's fine because.
No, it's actually the state saying that they realize that there are cases where sewers have to be brought through a Zone A. And here are the exceptions to not having a sewer in a Zone A. And it's those two exceptions. So it's actually the state regulations having to do with sewers in a Zone A.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, that still the logic of it doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
So we'll just, it seems to me like the answer is you shouldn't be building here.
No, it's directly from the DEP. It's so that building can occur and that sewers can be put in a Zone A. That's exactly how the state wrote the regulations.
Okay, I'll wait until our until peer review looks at your comment, because I was reading your response to their comment saying you can't do that. So the logic of being able to didn't make any sense to me, but I'll hold the question until our peer review has a chance to review your response.
Yeah, fair enough.
Make sense of the convoluted logic. So thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Tanzi, anything you want to say?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One was the Zone A, and I did look up the regulations, and it prohibits a sewer from going through a Zone A. There are two exceptions to that. Okay, encasing the sewer in concrete or sleeving it is not an exception. That has to be done if the two exceptions are met.
Correct.
And I'm looking at 310 CMR 22.2 B3B. And what it says is all sewer lines and appurtenances are prohibited. And they're talking about within the zone A, okay? Except as required to eliminate existing, okay, or potential pollution to water supply. This is not an existing pollution or potential pollution to the water supply. Or, okay, then it says, or where the crossing of tributaries is necessary to construct a public sewer system. So that would mean a sewer that is taking existing houses onto a sewer system rather than having, say, a septic system polluting the groundwater. Now, the applicant has said that he's making the case that he's eliminating a septic system. I don't think the site could support a septic system anyway, and that's one argument. But the real argument is you're not eliminating that potential threat. That potential threat of a septic system for this development does not exist. The language is quite clear. It's emphasizing existing potential pollution to the water side that's required to eliminate. This is typically dealing with houses that have septic systems, existing houses. They're in or near critical areas like zone A's or whatever, and they need to be sewered so that these septic systems don't compromise groundwater situations or sensitive areas like water supplies. The second thing is this is all new development. Not only is it going through a zone A through a new sewer, that new sewer is connected to an old sewer. And as you know, we have a lot of II problems, which is basically fancy word for leaky sewers. If you have a lot of water leaking in during high groundwater conditions, you're going to have sewage water leaking out during dry conditions and even in high groundwater conditions. I think the bigger threat to the zone A would be sending all the sewage of this development through an existing sewer system in the zone A. The way I read this language, it's all in the context of eliminating existing problems or an existing potential problem. And I just don't see this project falling under the criteria of 310 CMR 22.23B. The other thing that I noticed regarding the culverts. Now, the Conservation Commission wants the existing pipes removed and having those culverts meet what's called a stream crossing standard. Now, the state has guidelines of how to provide culverts where amphibians, invertebrates, fish, and other non-aquatic wildlife can pass through along the banks of these, of the crossings. I think that this, I know that this is a conservation issue, but I think those existing culverts should be removed. I think it falls underneath the criteria of meeting the stream crossing standards that the state puts out. And this would basically be three-sided bridges where those culverts are. And the other thing that I noticed, if you call up the plan that shows the zone A on that causeway, there's no culvert under a tributary. There's a tributary line going underneath the causeway to this development. And that road, I don't think anybody has picked up on it, but that causeway road is damming off that tributary. So that definitely would require a stream crossing evaluation. And you can't dam it off. I mean, if you look, do you see the plan with the zone A, with the blue zone A on it on the causeway? You'll see that there's a tributary running underneath the road, and there's no provision to for a culvert so that that flow can freely flow underneath the causeway and go into the reservoir. So, I mean, that's something that I would like to see get done. I also noticed that there's an area called, and this would be to the east of the parking lot. There's an area called amenities area, and it says see landscaping. There used to be a building, excuse me, in that area. Apparently the building has been eliminated. And you know, I'm curious as to why it was eliminated and why there's no discussion about that building being eliminated when we were talking about the changes that were done to the plans. Is there anybody who can inform the board about what's going on there? I mean, you had mentioned something about rock walls being added in the building and so forth and so on. I'd like to see a floor plan, the latest and greatest floor plan, and take a look at some of these amenities and rock walls and whatnot. But is there anybody who can speak to that elimination of that building that I was talking about?
Yeah, I can touch upon that. So the amenities area was in the previous plan set. The building had, from our last meeting on, was that November 15th, showed that amenities area. It's a playground area, you know, an outdoor playground area. The building had been eliminated prior to that. And again, the amenities and the offices and the, you know, function of the apartment building, all of that used to be in that community building that was off to the side. There's now been eliminated, and those services are now transferred into the main unit apartment buildings. So then we, you know, so we had that space over there, that open space, you know, we assumed it would be a good location for amenities. You know, we had, you know, we were able to keep 25 feet off of the wetland for that. We were allowed to, you know, it's against, you know, an existing upland area, and that's what occurred with that community building there. And I can screen share. You know, I apologize. I brought it down, I think, to allow. I know it's helpful for everybody to kind of see the plans as we chat about this. So again, that's this area down here in the bottom. Where am I here? Bottom right-hand corner here. This area. I'll move this circle over here. So this is that amenities area, which is new, you know, again, on the landscaping plans and you know, playground areas, jungle gym type use in that area. And then as far as the building, the indoor amenities areas, I believe that was, again, submitted during the November submission. There hasn't been any changes to that. You know, I believe that information was all supplied during that submission, hence why it isn't, you know, in this current plan set. And if it hasn't, I can definitely work to get that information over to you guys, you know, as simply as possible. Another note towards what Mr. Tanzio was talking about. So these tributaries are there. It's actually the center line of the water surface supply line. They're not actually defined tributaries. This is what DEP has given us as their requirements of their edge of zone A. So this is the line that they had, there is no defined tributary that goes through that area. The water travels through the site as such. So that's just the center line of their zone A. At which they have the jurisdiction there. So just clarifying that concern with the fact that that going through the wall at that location. And then I think the final the sewer again I would have to divert to Mike or Don Nagel on those questions.
Understanding that the DEP took a good hard look at this, these tributaries with the applicant for a considerable amount of time. There's a lot of dispute about it. Now, a tributary has a definition, and it talks about a defined water course that's in the ground, moving under a hydraulic head, and these tributaries have moving water in them flowing under a head. So, and that meets the definition of a tributary. And the DEP took a good hard look at this mapping of the tributaries, and they're saying that that is a tributary. And that's going to require some, you can't dam it off. I don't know why you're saying that it's just the center line of the zone A. The zone A is a buffer distance. In this case, it's a tributary, so it's a 200-foot buffer off the tributary. So you can't dam off that tributary. You've got to provide some type of a culvert. It's going to have to meet stream crossing standards. You can't disturb its bank. I don't know if you can. You're going to have to be careful with the construction of that wall on the causeway. You can't disturb that tributary.
So I would divert to Don Nagel to maybe give some more information on the conversations as we're going on with DEP. Don, you got?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, we've resolved or we've come to agreement, I should say, with DEP on the zone A. So what you see there on the plan is the revised zone A. So there's no issue about the zone A anymore with DEP. They sent a letter that was forwarded to the ZBA. I think it was in November of last year. And in terms of damming off any of the tributaries to the zone A, I'm not sure I understand what that comment is about, but I mean, happy to address it if I understand more about it. Regarding the culverts and the request to remove the existing pipes, I understand from reviewing the comments, the response to comments that Damien submitted is that those culverts don't need to be removed, and the stream standards don't apply because we're going to put a three-sided structure over the existing pipes without touching the banks of the of that stream. So there's no interference with that crossing at all, and in fact it leaves room for for wildlife to pass through it to and from.
If you remove the pipe and you left the bridge that you're proposing to construct that three-sided bridge. If you remove the culvert, you're going to have a situation that's going to meet the intent of stream crossing standards. You're going to improve access, not just for, small aquatic creatures, but a variety of wildlife. You've got a substantial wall on that causeway that's going to block off wildlife. And this is where corridors become, very, very important. And I think we need a third bridge culvert here to meet the standards. That is a substantial bifurcation of a very sensitive area, a substantial wetland that has a vernal pool in its proximity, and it has basically a network of tributaries that produce a zone A sensitive area. So I just don't see how or why you would want to dismiss such an important environmental benefit. You've got to develop land responsibly, and damming off a tributary with the walls that you are proposing and not upgrading culvert crossings to meet the stream crossings, it quite frankly, it bewilders me. There are some real issues with this project. The last thing that I want to go over, and I would like I think the board should give or try to give the applicant some direction. And this is dealing with parking. What I've noticed, okay, back in January 4th of February 19th, 2021, there was a parking count of 414 spaces, okay? Back then, we were proposing the 236 units, or my records said 238, but that's immaterial. So that's a parking ratio of 1.75, okay? That was in February of 2021. February 14th, 2022, the parking count went down to 305 spaces. Now, the units went down to 199. So that's a 1.53 ratio. So the ratio went from 175 to 1.53. There's a landscaping plan that was in March of 2022 that showed 317 spaces, and there was 199 units. In September of 2022, there's 303 spaces at 99 units. Again, that's 1.52. And then here in April of 2023, we've got 299 spaces, and we still have 199 units. That's a 1.5 ratio. Can the applicant explain where these counts are coming from and why the counts have dropped over the submittals? The submittals that were spaced over considerable time amounts, which is kind of easy to lose track of. So how are you justifying that each one of these units is going to have basically one car living there, and then every other unit is gonna have 2 cars unit there, because that's a 1.5 ratio. Our, 1.5 cars per unit. Our bylaw requires 3 cars per unit.
Okay, we've based this off of the, apartment building, obviously additional parking spaces, create additional impervious areas. Reducing parking, has, turned into, much of our other larger projects, um, seen as a benefit. Parking ratios in, more dense areas, understand Rockland's not, Boston, are significantly smaller. Our developer has seen that, a 1.5 ratio usually works for his types of developments. That has come to be a useful number. Obviously, the regulations are for, the town per unit are based off of, different types of living communities, and coming down, we've done, the units have reduced, parking has reduced, we're trying to reduce the scope, due to, the different components of the project that have come across. So, we're trying to, play as many sides of the, work the project into what's a reasonable solution here for to get, some nice apartment buildings with parking areas on the project. So, the 1.5 ratio is, where we sit now. The reduction in units was, reduction in scope to help with the impacts of the site, to get it there, and reducing parking helps reduce, areas within buffer zones and resource setbacks to have lesser impervious areas, and is typically considered an environmental plus versus, having significant more parking that, often doesn't get used.
So we've had 199, and we've gone from 305, 317, 303 parking spaces, and now we're at 299 spaces. How did you reduce that? I mean, you've got the same amount of units. Why have you reduced that down to 299?
The 1 point, I think, I mean, we reduced it by reducing the amount of impervious and the amount of parking area. We've come to the conclusion that a 1.5 parking ratio is adequate for this type of development based off of other projects that we've had of this scope, and becoming, reduction in impervious, that was a conclusive number to sit on, and reducing impervious helps in, in the facets of environmental, reducing environmental impacts.
Damien, can you do us a favor? Can you pull up the plan and show us the areas that you've modified where you brought the pavement back to, in effect, reducing the number of parking spaces?
So
I think that would help everybody understand it, because again, as you're going through the Conservation Commission, as the Zone A is changed and stuff like that, obviously the impervious areas had to get decreased to some degree.
yeah.
Is that something that you can do?
Yeah, so, I'll pull up the plans here, past plans, I'm not gonna shuffle through all of them.
No, but just on your,
Yeah, in general, yeah, I can give a general scope of that. So, the access road has been tight between the wetlands as we have been coming through this. We have previously had parking up in this area, back here. The fire has asked, us to kind of leave some of that area. They found it made it more difficult. They'd rather have just clearer access, a little bit of separation from the building there. Again, reduction in parking, allowing that area, also some landscaped, usable, amenable area. Addition, the building being here, parking, can be decreased in almost, little snippets as well, right? So along this area, there was that building that came across here. We used to previously connect this area, and parking came down that way. So, but due to access, the thought of, vehicles driving straight down here across the fire access and things like that, we thought that putting in some sidewalks and some safety measures there aided in that. And again, in the way that the grading and drainage kind of worked out, it's a moving puzzle, right? That's part of being an engineer, and how it works is working through the different aspects of how the site needs to change. I believe that the parking used to, take up a larger area over here. This is, mostly where that impact has been reduced to the greatest extent. So let me really highlight that area over here. Along this edge, and then again further down towards the buffer zone. So there was previous parking. This is probably where the most reduction has been done, near the vernal pools, and against along Wilson Street is where the major amount of reduction has occurred. Does that answer? Does that help out, Rob?
That helps out me. Mr. Tanzi, does that kind of give you a slight idea as to what's happening?
No, I know where I saw where, I compared the two plans and I saw where the reductions were. But the question that I have, the applicant, is, are you aware of 301 CMR 11.036B15 under the transportation MEPA thresholds for filing an ENF? It says construction of 300 or more new parking spaces at a single location triggers MEPA. Now you have, 299. Did you arrive at that parking count to avoid filing with MEPA?
Again, the parking count has been based off of the ratios associated with the buildings.
Yeah. Well, are you familiar with the Viva Apartments in Bridgewater?
Not specifically.
Oh, the Viva Apartments in Bridgewater are 5-story bar building apartment complex. In fact, it looks like a sister to this project. And they've got studio apartments, they've got 1-bedroom apartments, they've got 2-bedroom apartments and 3-bedroom apartments, much like what you're proposing here. A studio apartment pulls in a rent of just under $2,000 a month. A 1-bedroom apartment is $2,500 a month. 2-bedroom apartments are between $3,000 and $3,200 a month, and a 3-bedroom apartment is $3,900 a month. Do you honestly think that pulling in these rents, you're going to have one income with one car in these units? In a studio unit, you'll probably have some people that is single person, one car, but you can have a newly married couple living in a studio apartment that have 2 cars, that have to have 2 incomes to pay $2,000 a month for an apartment. People starting out. Again, the same thing with a 1-bedroom, a $2,500 a month. You're going to have you'll have dual incomes. A 2-bedroom apartment could be 2 guys splitting the rent. They're going to have girlfriends and guests and, whatever. So right there at the 2-bedroom apartment, you're gonna have at least a 2.0 ratio of parking. Certainly, a 3-bedroom apartment at $3,900, you've got a family living there. You know, you might even have a teenager with a 3rd car. So to say that a 1.5 ratio is adequate, I can't see that. We've had a lot of comments from the police about the parking and towing. I just cannot see how anybody who understands the economic scenario, I mean, this is right next to the expressway. People with cars that need to get on that expressway are going to be drawn to this place to live. 1.5 a ratio isn't going to cut it. I think I would, Mr. Chairman, if it's, I mean, going through the chairman, I think we really should give the applicant some realistic direction on what a viable parking count would be. I mean, I would say probably a studio might be a 1.75, same thing with a 1-bedroom. I mean, 3/4 of those one bedroom units are probably going to be occupied by 2 people with 2 cars just starting out. You know, a 2-bedroom apartment, definitely at least 2 cars. And the 3-bedroom apartment, again, at least 2 cars per unit. It's probably a 2.75 ratio is probably a more likely scenario. You know, there's gotta be, you gotta have some allowance for guests. This is how people live. Some people, they've got a small kids, and the grandparent comes in and watches them during the day. And, you know, you got 2 cars of the parents, and then the grandparent comes in. I mean, you need to have a realistic parking lot count, not finagling it so that you can avoid NEPA thresholds. And by the way, reading through the comments of the Conservation Commission, it seems that you tried to avoid the NEPA thresholds on some of the conservation issues as well. This if you don't have the land area for this development, it's time you realistically look at developing this land properly. You're shoehorning too much development in one area. I mean, the numbers just don't lie. The basic common sense scales of economies are all there. Somebody's not going to pay $4,000 a month for a 3-bedroom apartment and have only 1 vehicle. You know, the vast majority, that's just not the way it works. It's just totally impractical, especially in a project that's right next door to the on-ramp of the expressway. People who are going to be drawn to that development because of its location to the expressway. They're going to have cars. They're all going to have cars. So, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I've spoken my piece here, and you know, I mean, I had other stuff about the wells. We've already covered that. I don't see any zone 1. Apparently, they're still proposing well water. And I don't know anything about where that well is, what the zone 1 is, or any of that information. I mean, I've probably said enough already, but I think we need to really take a hard look at a very important factor, if you don't have adequate parking, I mean, it's a health hazard. It's a burden on the police.
Mhm.
It just has to be realistically looked at based on scales of economy and not on, trying to avoid a MEPA threshold.
I agree with you 100%, Greg. You hit the nail on the head, absolutely 100%. Damien, can I ask you this? How many total bedrooms are in the place?
Total bedrooms.
Yep.
Yeah, let me. Um, we can come back with more information on this next meeting. Yeah, let me just. I have to calculate it from the architecturals. It's not something that I necessarily have off the top of my head.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's why I asked. I knew you wouldn't. So,
Okay.
do me a favor. I want that calculation. Because if it's, I want to see where it falls in relation to the 199 parking spaces. Or the 299, the 299 parking spaces. All right, Greg, you got anything more? You good?
I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tanzi. Appreciate that. Mr. Galley, you're waving your hand like nobody's business. Talk to me, sir.
Just wanted to piggyback. Is it splitting hairs, besides asking you how many bedrooms, the breakdown of the number of units per bedroom count? How many studios, how many one bedroom, how many two bedroom, etc.?
He's going to have to do that. He's going to have to do that anyway to do the final calculation. So I mean, Damien, if you could make that happen.
They're supplied on the architectural plans that I believe were submitted previously. All that information is there. Again, I was jumping onto those plans that were previously supplied to get that information, but again, off the top of my head, many projects, many bedroom counts.
No, that's fine. That's fine. If we can put that together in just in a formal notation, that would be helpful. Mr. Galley, you got anything else?
No, not at the time. Thank you.
All right, and Pat, I know we've talked. You need more than enough time to go through this, correct?
Yeah, I'm gonna need more time to go
Okay.
through everything.
All right. From there, Mr. Galvin, do you have anything to say at this point, Attorney Galvin?
I do. You currently have an extension through May 19th, 2020 to complete the public hearing process.
Mhm.
So you're going to need a further extension. And in order to kind of determine what the appropriate extension would be, we need to talk about what your schedule is going to be as a board too. Pat's usually pretty good with a couple of weeks turnaround, but I don't know when you're all meeting. And I know that, the board can always change and things like that. So I want to make sure that everybody's around.
Yeah, it's getting tight. Pat, you think 2 weeks? You think you're okay with 2 weeks or?
I would say for me to have a letter to, it would probably be at least 3 weeks.
Okay, so and we're still looking at 30 days, a minimum of 30 days at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I think we should also ask the commission, meaning the Conservation Commission, to provide the board with a letter to the extent that there are any local wetland bylaw issues, so that the board is aware of the commission's position on those issues.
Right. Hasn't happened yet, so. We'll try again. Other than that, is there anything else, Attorney Galvin?
No,
Okay, well, there's been a decent amount of talk about, actually, I did get something from Dave Taylor. It wasn't much, but it was enough that it was enough to talk about. This is email received 4 hours ago, actually. Received the plan on Shingle Mill, and again, this is Dave Taylor, Superintendent for the Rockland Highway Department. Received the plans on Shingle Mill yesterday, not a sufficient amount of time to review. I did notice there was no plan showing widening of road at entrance. No sidewalks from development to Turner. No remediation and drainage upgrades to Wilson, Colby, Curry, and Wright, just to touch on. So those are the things that he was looking at. Damien, does that sound, do we know what's going on there? Is there anything you can talk about on that?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't received those comments. I don't know exactly. Yeah.
All right, again, it's just something he wanted brought up. It was just in quick review of that. We've talked about this before. I know we've talked about this before when it comes to widening the road, when it talks to sidewalks on Pond Street, when it comes to drainage remediation on the associated streets. So, I know that's going to be an issue. Once the different departments have their own individual time to go over that, we'll forward you all those comments as well. Let's see. All right. What else we got to talk about at this point? I mean, there's really not a ton. And it's at this point we can do limited comments from the general public if we want to. I know people want to talk about this. So if there's something new to talk about, we can definitely entertain it tonight. If it comes down to the same old, we're not going to beat a dead horse. If there's something new to talk about, then I'm more than willing to.
Oh, there is. I was on the MEPA process. It kind of looks like they're trying to fragment this project. Okay. With keeping the parking spaces. So yeah, that's a MEPA process, and yes, I've been developers doing that before. Also, the other new thing, Mr. Tansey brought it up. They're going to put a culvert over that stream.
Barry, you're bouncing in and out. Your internet signal's not happening. You're having issues with your internet signal. That's number one. And number two, Mr. Tansey has already brought that information up. So that's nothing new. Let's talk about something new. Do you have something new to talk about?
Well, actually, the culvert will happen because I've been involved in a culvert over an intermittent stream, and that is new.
Right, Mr. Tansey brought that up. So they're going to have to address that once they look into that. And again, Pat Brennan hasn't had any chance to really look at this. So it's been brought up. So let's talk about something new. If there's nothing really new to talk about. Yeah, I know. So, and again, just for the record, we all know this is Mary Parsons. We know where you live, Mary. So and I appreciate everything that you're saying. I'm just trying to get through this as easy as humanly possible. These are all issues that we already know exist. If anybody has something that they want to talk about of situations that we have not talked about yet, then let's talk about it.
Well, you haven't talked about the underground stormwater. And I don't know why my internet is like this. You haven't talked about the underground stormwater.
Because it hasn't been reviewed yet. We can't really talk about it because it hasn't been reviewed. Pat has not had the opportunity.
But they showed it on their.
Right, they show it, but just because they show it doesn't mean that Pat knows everything about it. That doesn't mean that Mr. Tansey has looked at it. You know, it's something that peer review has to look at.
Right. Well,
Right.
that's what I'm saying. That's what's new on that.
Right.
Doesn't mean I'm not meaning that everyone's talked about it yet.
Yeah, no, it's new. We've already talked about that the drainage is new and Pat has to look at it. So, and we don't know enough about it to really talk about it, other than the fact that it's different. We already know. That's good. That's not good. What else you got? And Mary,
That's it.
All right, Mary, you know I love you. You know I'm not trying to shut you up by any means. I want this over for tonight because I'm so aggravated that we haven't had enough time to look at this.
And you know you need to tell me the next time there's a open house at the sandpaper factory.
I'm gonna set myself a personal alarm for that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Baker.
I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing on Shingle Mills to June 6th meeting at 6:30.
Deb, does that work? That works? All right, I've got a motion. Is there anything else you want to add into that motion? Anything, any other specifics,
Any of the information that we requested be given to us by May 28th, 9th.
Pat, does that seem reasonable?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Damian, does that seem reasonable to you?
Yeah, well, I'll work with Pat, and if there's any additional information or he has comments, we'll work through that as we receive them. But June 6th works for now. May 29th, if information.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that there was expressed consent that you and Pat can talk, off air. I just wanted to make sure that is known. All right. I got a motion. Do we got a second?
Rob,
Hold on. We got a Deb.
Deb,
you have to extend the hearing.
And then we get and modify the motion to also include a request for extension through Attorney Galvin. What date should we go through? Just through the meeting or?
Well, so the next hearing date is going to be what, June 6th?
Yeah.
6th.
So, you really shouldn't continue it until the applicant gives you the indication that they're willing to agree to that, first of all. And then they can agree to supply that letter to you. I would think that we'll have another meeting. There'll be peer review. There could be some changes and you'll want public input. So I'm envisioning you're going to need at least 2 more hearings.
Okay.
June 6th and then one after that. So I might suggest that you extend till at least mid to late July right now.
Attorney Mirioni, is that?
We'll give you a letter in the morning, as we always do. We'll extend through the end of July.
That works. All right, Attorney, Mr. I got a second. All right. So the only other question that I have at this point, and I know that they're talking about it at the selectmen's meeting right now. And I gotta bring it up now because it has potential of affecting this. So Mr. Haynes and I had a discussion about this. He will not be continuing on the zoning board of appeals after May. So what that does to this hearing is it decreases the number of voting members down to 3. Attorney Galvin, does that do anything to, what does that do?
It means that when the board goes to vote, it'll be only 3 people that vote and a majority vote will carry. So they'll need 2 out of 3 in order to gain a comprehensive permit.
Right. So that works.
Remember, a comprehensive permit is different from the ordinary special permits that require 4/5 votes or a unanimous vote where there's only 4 board members. Comprehensive permits are decided by majority vote of a quorum.
All right, and we're still, and obviously, we're still gonna have a quorum with the 3 members.
You will.
All right. Tim, I didn't want to drop it now, but I've needed an answer to that question for a little while. So while we're still in the hearing, I'd like to thank Mr. Haynes for his dedication to the zoning board at this point. You will be missed, sir. So I just wanted to state that at this point. If things happen to change, sir, and you want to change that, I will gladly welcome you back. But at this point, I have a motion and I have a second on the table. Any other discussion on that? None? All right. So I have a motion, I have a second. Roll call, myself is a yes. Mr. Baker Senior,
Yes.
Mr. Haynes,
Yes.
Mr. Tanzi.
Yes.
Rock and roll. All right, so we got everything taken care of. Again, just you guys talk back and forth, just get this taken care of. Damian, Pat, just, do it as best as you can. As the comments from other departments come in, we'll forward them directly to you, Damian and Pat, obviously. Walter, Donald, we'll have everybody together on this and we'll go with it. Anything else to talk about? I don't think so.
Okay. Motion to close the hearing?
Other than, I'm looking at it, other than non-deliberative announcements. Deb, we got anything? Nothing? No scheduling, no minutes to talk about. Roll call. I got a motion to adjourn.
Hey, Deb, I passed my test.
Oh, good.
I finally got in on it.
Nice. Took a while, but I heard it was a pain to make that happen.
I threw the laptop, picked it up and it started working.
Nice. All right, congratulations on that. So again, I've got a motion. Do I have a second for adjourn?
Okay.
I got a second. Roll call. Myself is a yes. Mr. Senior, Mr. Baker Senior,
Yes.
Mr. Haynes,
Yes.
Mr. Tanzi.
Yes.
Go home. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it. We'll see you next
Good night,
month.
everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.